Welcome to the online engagement session for a land use rezoning application for Sarina Homes to rezone two mid-block properties on the 1600 block of 33rd Avenue Southwest. My name is Jennifer Dobbin and my company is Dobbin Consulting. I'm a land planning and public engagement consultant in Calgary. I'll be moderating tonight's online session. The subject development for this engagement session is located at 1624 through 1640 33rd Avenue Southwest. It encompasses 5 lots on the west end of the same block as the completed Cocoa development. This application is specifically for the two mid-block properties of 1924 and 1928 and seeks to extend the approved zoning of MU1 F 3.5 H20 from the western 3 lots onto the two mid-block properties. We note that this application is for land redesignation and further public engagement will be conducted during the development permit application for the building design. First, I would like to introduce the panel participants. And I will just show their webcams. First, I would like to introduce Nazim Varani, the president of Sarina Homes, and Max Parrish, Sarina's development manager, Tony Casola, partner at Casola Kopp Architects, and Talisha Wagner, lead architect. We are also joined by Jared Friedman, City of Calgary file manager for this application. And I believe we may have Mark Sagas, the City of Calgary coordinator for community planning. I will now go over the agenda and review the housekeeping rules for everyone's engagement session. Currently, we have 23 registered attendees. 13 of you are online, besides the panel and myself. During this live session, you will first hear from Nazim Varani, the president of Sarina Homes, and then Talisha Wagner with Casola Kopp Architects. She will provide a walkthrough of the application with a slideshow. And finally, Max Parrish of Sarina Homes will review the application timeline. After these presentations, I will be moderating a Q&A session where attendees can ask questions of the panel. You will note that all attendees' microphones are disabled. We request that you submit your questions to the panelists through the chat function. You can find the chat on the right-hand side of your screen by clicking on questions. And if you have a dual monitor, we've noticed that that can be far over on the right-hand second monitor. So you're looking for the orange arrow to open it up. Pardon me. During the question and answer period, we will group similar questions together for efficacy. The presentation slides will be provided to the public after this session, and any unanswered questions can be sent by email to max.parrish@sarinahomes.ca. A What We Heard report and recording of this engagement panel will be provided after the session with a transcript. I would like to introduce Nazim Varani, president of Sarina Homes. Just give me a moment to get his webcam allowed here. Go ahead, Nazim.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. My name is Naz, and with Sarina Homes, and we've been building in the community of Marteloup for just over 10 years now. Our work on 33rd Avenue has entailed building, the Avenue 33 project. It's a 36-unit mixed-use project on the corner of 20th Street. It's on the right corner there. Cocoa, which is a 74-unit residential building beside this proposed project, and we're actually currently building Harrison, which is a 63-unit mixed-use project on the corner of 18th Street. The main streets have been evolving across the city, and 33rd Avenue is definitely one of the more active main streets in the city, compared to the other streets that we've been seeing, and it's quite evolved over the last few years. We definitely see the vision the city has into redeveloping the Main Street program within the established areas. It's exciting for us to be a part of that program, to bring density into the established areas on the busier corridors. We wish to continue our work on the Main Street program, and by putting by adding more diverse housing choices to the community, and by building thoughtful quality spaces on the Main Street. We definitely have a vision for adding to that urban fabric into Marda Loop, where it goes beyond just building homes or commercial spaces. We definitely see ourselves involved in community aspects, whether it's Mardi Gras or the farmers market, or other community opportunities where we can partner. But we also see opportunity in bringing art to the streets, and different ideas and thoughts into really shaping that urban fabric of the established areas. This project has evolved over the last year and a half or so. Talisha from Casola COP will review the changes of the project with you, and show you how it has evolved. And we've definitely gotten some really good feedback from neighbors and engaged residents in the area. And hopefully Talisha can touch on those points so you can see how we've incorporated that feedback to help shape our project. So, Talisha.
My apologies. I'm seeming to have trouble getting her camera to come on. There we go.
Oh, hi. Good evening. I'm Talisha Wagner from Casola Kappa Architects. Thank you so much for joining us. We did this last July, I think, for the 3 parcels. And this project, like Naz said, is growing, it's evolving. And so I'm here to walk through with you where we've come. And I'll do my best to answer any questions that might be related to the design of the proposed buildings that might arise from this presentation. So I think we can go to the next slide. I just want to start with where we've come and where we're going. So this is our previous site plan, and this was the 3 parcel design. And previously we had the main floor as purely commercial mixed use retail. And can you see my cursor? It wraps, it goes from 33rd Avenue, 16th Street, and it wraps the corner into the lane. Oh, shoot. Sorry, I thought I had the ability to show my cursor, but that's okay.
You do. My apologies. I've added that for you.
Okay. I don't know where that is, but that's okay. So some of you might have been here when we had our presentation last year, but for those of you who didn't, we had, this is where it was. And so we had the main residential entry coming in off of 16th Street, sorry. The waste and recycling is on the northeast corner where it says waste pickup. And thank you. And adjacent to that to the east is the access to the underground parkade. If we're looking at the setbacks on this building, at the lane, the north property line, we were just 1.4 meters from our property line there. On the west side, on 16th Avenue, it ranged from 2.6 to 3.6 meters. On 33rd Avenue, we were looking at about 3 meters, and our east property line, which was adjacent to a low density residential, was 3 meters also. And the main floor generally filled out the site, and it was sort of pushed back to the laneway. Moving on to the next slide. this is our project expanded over 5 parcels. And we've taken a somewhat different approach in an effort to achieve our desired floor area, but also to minimize the impact to the neighbors to the north predominantly. So we've moved the massing away from the laneway to create a courtyard space. And although this slide just provides a basic footprint, I can walk you through the intended programming for the main floor. This is where it would be really helpful if I had the ability to mark on the sheet. But I don't, so that's fine. I appreciate you bearing with me for a moment here. So the first big change is that Sarina Homes has moved away from the commercial aspect of this project. That seemed to, we were listening to feedback from our first open house and it seemed to be less desirable. So we've sort of transitioned that into a live work use. So along 33rd Avenue, our walk-up style suites are intended as live work. They could also be 3-bedroom units. They're around 1,200 square feet. They kind of range from 11 to 1,200, and they do have 3 bedrooms in them. They're intended as a live workspace so that you could have a 2-bedroom unit with a, we're still developing that part of it and we're looking at land use, but that's a big change. Also, we're keeping the activated corner, and you see I have 2 entrances. The entrance for the residential is still primarily off of 16th Street. That's where you'll enter the lobby. Where the second entrance is off of 33rd Avenue, that will be the entrance to the building's amenities, which include a gym and a lounge. So even though it's intended for the users of the building, it still has transparency and you'll see people in there working out. So we kind of get that sense of commercial space, even though it's sort of an in-between. So we're using that to activate the corner. The setbacks are now proposed. The northwest corner, instead of 1.4 meters, we've pushed that to 4 meters. And the courtyard space is pushed into 13.5 meters. The south setback along 33rd Avenue, we've brought it closer to around 2 meters. And this the east property line beside the Cocoa development, still at 3 meters, although we do have a bit of a bump out there, which contributes to the building's articulation, and it just works with our floor plans. Our next slide, so you can see the approach to the parking. So the next slide is the old parking plan, and the ramp is located sort of same idea, northeast corner. Previously, we had 41 parking stalls for 50 units, and the intent was to share the commercial stalls with the residential over the differing hours of operation. But this doesn't work anymore because we don't have retail. So can we move to the next slide? We have expanded our parking to a larger P1 and then also a half level of P2. And so we get closer to a 1-to-1 ratio. In other words, nearly 1 stall is provided for every unit in the building. 12 of those stalls are reserved for visitors and 115 stalls are dedicated to residents. We're also proposing 88 storage units in the P2, which are large enough to fit a bicycle. We also have 55 dedicated bicycle stalls at grade. So we have a ton of storage, and the lockers in the basement could be used for either or. In short, we've drastically increased the parking ratio, and we're trying to strike a balance between this transit supported development and ensuring the practical demand for parking is met. On our next slide, we have the previous massing study that we had done, and the setbacks are noted here. The building was sort of carved out to minimize shadows, and it was stepping back as it increased in height. The commercial main floor, though, was close to the lane, occupied most of the site, and the outdoor amenity spaces were proposed as rooftop patios on the main floor and the east setback where the building is set back. And the ceiling heights for the main floor and the 5th floor were maximized. So the building in the previous iteration was close to the maximum height of 20 meters. In the next slide, we will see that this is our new massing study. And you can see that the approach is to push the middle of the building closer to the main street, pulling this interior space back as much as possible from the low density residential. And you can see how the northwest corner is pulled back to 4 meters and where our courtyard is set back to 13.5 meters. The 6th story, it has an increased step back from the street on 33rd Avenue and on the northwest corner. And we've maintained that 3-meter setback from the east property line. We don't have the bump out on that side. And this is all to reduce our shadowing effects, which we can see on our next slide. So our next slide is actually the previous shadow. And it illustrates, while there are some shadowing impacts, the intent was to ensure that the shadowing was limited to the portion of the rear yards to the north, to the space where the garages are. That's sort of our line. And on our next slide, we can see the proposed shadowing for our new development. And this slide illustrates the shadowing effects. This is at the spring equinox, and we've worked to keep the shadows to that same line of the garages. And you can see in this massing strategy, it actually produces a similar shadow length as the neighboring building Coco. Even though our development is 6 stories, because the bulk of the gross floor area is pushed away from the lane, it sort of achieves the same effect. Our next slide is an overlay of our previous development proposal and our new development proposal, where the previous is in orange and the new is in blue. And in some places, the new shadowing is actually less impactful. And so although our new shadows are expanded west because our new proposal expands west, it's inevitable because our proposal spans the balance of the block. But again, these shadows can be shown as similar to the shadowing of the 4-story development. So even a 4-story development, if we proposed it on the same space but masked it differently to achieve the allowed gross floor area of the zoning, the same zoning that's on the corner now, it could actually potentially produce more severe shadowing effects. So we're really working to be sensitive. Our last slide here is just a summary of our previous proposal and the current proposal. The current land use application seeks to extend the existing zoning from the corner across the remaining 2 lots. The new overall development proposal has removed the commercial component and added a live work as a use to the main floor. Removing the commercial space and adding 2 parcels worth of land has increased the number of units to 125. And just as a side note for your information, the units we have vary in size from 1 bedrooms at 500 square feet to 3 bedrooms at 1,200 square feet. And so we can offer a variety of housing types, including live work, including some awesome penthouse units, not trying to sales pitch you. And the new proposal, it's the same height and FAR as the previous proposal. We heard concerns relating to parking, and we've listened by increasing the number of parking stalls and increase the number of stalls to the overall. We're trying to match the number of stalls to units. And the massing strategy for the building envelope still works to minimize impact to the adjacent low density residential by concentrating the massing at the main street edge and providing a sensitive interface between this building and the existing residents to the north of the lane. We're still trying to keep that main street feel along 33rd Avenue, and we're really working to make this like a cool addition to Marda Loop. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to hand it back over to Max with Sarina Homes.
Max, you seem to be muted.
I just saw that, thanks. Thank you, Talisha. Yeah, for those who don't know me, I'm Max Parrish with Sarina Homes, the development manager. So the main point of contact for any communication to date and going forward from this. If you could flick to the next slide, thank you, the timeline, thank you, Jennifer. So this, just want to highlight to everyone on the call, the engagement process that we have had to date. So the top half shows some of the permitting and city related items. The bottom half shows more of the neighborhood engagement. So just to reiterate, obviously we did have the approval for the 3 parcels on the corner to MU1 F3.5H20, and that's what's shown on the left of the slide. So we had quite extensive engagement throughout 2019 and 2020, and then we were successful in that rezoning. And obviously now it is the 2 parcels adjacent which we're rezoning from a land use perspective, but obviously the building itself is a 5 parcel proposed project. So just to show here as well, then on the right hand side of the page, you have the current application for those 2 parcels, which is 1624 and 1628 33rd Ave. The land use application was submitted by Sarina as shown in April 2021, and that's for the same zoning that has been approved on the 3 parcels. So that is MU1, and that is with a FAR of 3.5 and a height of 20. So from our application in April, all the communication attendees have received and site signage, refreshing the website and postcard drop and emails you've got for today's session occurred within May. Also, we're having today's session. There will be a What We Heard report follow-up within June, most likely. And then we are currently penciled in for the Calgary Planning Commission, which is a closed session in June 2021. So later, June 17. So if we are successful through that, we will then be at the Public Hearing of Council on July 26, I believe it is. And that is the open session where members of the public are able to attend and speak, as some have in the past. So just to preempt and answer a couple of questions which have already come in. So for tonight's session, the invites were distributed to approximately 120 neighbours. So that consists of a half-block radius around the parcel in all directions, and then including Coco. And then there's also been emails sent out to anyone we've engaged with on the previous project, which includes about 10 people without further from that catchment area. And then there's been the site signage on the parcel itself, just for any passers-by who might see that signage as well. We also invited the BIA to attend, the MLCA, and hopefully Jennifer can confirm just in a couple of minutes when this presentation wraps up. There is hopefully representation of the councillor's office on the line, not on the panel, but listening in and available for questions post tonight. I think that's everything. Yeah, so thank you everyone for attending. I will now hand back to Jennifer, who will initiate the Q&A session.
I would like everybody to bring their webcams back online, and we'll open the panel up. I do have several questions here, and I can confirm that in our attendees, we have Zev Kilomochko. I'm very sorry, my dear. I am sure this happens often, but we have him online from the Councillor Ward 8 Councillor's Office for Evan Woolley. He would be able to answer us through the chat if you have any questions for them. Everybody seems to be all microphones on. Okay, so through the chat, we have several questions that have come in, and this is becoming a challenge for my ADHD, I've got to say. There's a lot going on. We have a question about the shadowing on the Coco building that someone had purchased there, and they feel that there will be shadowing on that side, and they wanted to know if someone could speak to that. I believe that would be to Talisha.
Talisha, if you could fill that, please, and perhaps flip back to your shadowing slide.
Yeah,
Yes.
Jennifer, do you mind going back to
This one.
I think it's slide 12.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you're right. There is shadowing on the Cocoa development. Thing is, like, you can see I hope you can see the shadow that Cocoa itself produces. So I'm not sure where this unit is. We are shadowing. There's just a little sliver kind of that would be shadowed late day. The thing is that no matter what, there would be shadowing there on those two. It's just inevitable. Those two parcels, like even if it was a 3-story building, there would be a shadow that would be cast from it at that time of day.
If I can just jump in, Talisha, so we
Yeah,
have,
please do.
I believe the bylaws for the MU1 districts are that there's a 0 setback between the proposed building and Cocoa, and we have a meter setback.
Yeah, we have 3 meters.
Sensitive to this potential issue, and that has a reduction in shadowing effect by being 3 meters away rather than tucked up exactly there. And then I believe we've also set back the 6th floor slightly on that edge as well, which further minimizes shadowing where we can to be sensitive to this issue. So I think, Talisha, hopefully I explained things clearly, but just for this diagram, if people can read, it just reads from top left, shadowing at 8 a.m., then 10 a.m., then 1 p.m., and the bottom left is 4 p.m. So 4 p.m., i.e. late afternoon, sunset. I assume sunset's not that long after that equinox, is the only time of potential impact.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I think it could be positive for Cocoa because that sunlight that comes in at that time of day is the very low, intensive western sun that can cause a lot of heat this time of year. So it could be beneficial in helping to cool that space.
Thank you. There was also a question about why the shadowing doesn't show it at 4 o'clock, but I think we've covered that it does do that.
Yeah, 4 o'clock is the bottom left.
There are some comments that they feel they'll be losing their afternoon sun. And to some degree, I would, if you wish to speak to the timeline on when Cocoa was developed and where you were at when you were contemplating this building, and then you added on some more lots. So if you wish to speak to that, Max. Oh, you're muted, Max.
Am I unmuted, Jennifer? I wasn't.
Yes, you are.
Quite what your question was.
There are several comments about the implication of this loss of sunlight on Cocoa, which would not have been known at the time that you were selling those units. Did you wish to speak to that timeline?
Perhaps NAS could, but obviously, well, not obviously, apologies, but we have gone from the 3 parcel project to the 5 parcel only recently from a recent acquisition. So that's largely what we're trying to present here, is the change from the 3 parcels on the corner to the 5 parcels. And obviously having that extension is what now means there is a degree of impact to Cocoa. And so and that's what's within the timeline, is that application happened in the last couple of months.
Can I just say too, this is like an average that we're doing the September equinox. I should have presented the June one too, but in June, in the summer months, it's because of the sun is directly overhead, the impact to Cocoa is actually very minimal. So this sort of gives us a cross section, not trying to hide anything about shadowing effects, but this is just a snapshot of one day of the year. It's not accurate to say that there will be no more afternoon sun.
Yeah, typical industry standard is what you see before yourselves is March and September equinox, I think you call it. June, as Talisha said, but the sun is so overhead, it doesn't show such an impact, which is why we're showing you the larger impact. and then December shows everything's under cover just by the height of the sun. So that's why March and September is what we typically speak to, and is what we're showing you today.
Go ahead. Oh. Naz,
Okay.
we're muted. You're unmuted now.
Perfect. Talisha, I think it's definitely worth doing some more further study on how do we reduce that impact to cocoa, particularly those corner homes. So, you know, I think we need to take this back and kind of understand this a little bit more month by month to understand what that impact looks like. I realize and acknowledge we are setting the building, you know, back to 3 meters versus the bylaw, whatever the bylaw states for 0 meter to 3 meter. We've made some of those moves to be considerate. But I don't think we have enough information here, especially to review with those homeowners. So I think we need to get some more information. I think let's look back and see how we can be more sensitive to this. And I don't know. I mean, you know, but I definitely think we need some more information and understanding of what we can do to figure this out. So I think it's an issue that we got to dig deeper on.
I'm absolutely happy to listen to this as a concern.
Thank you. I'm just reading through our questions here. There's quite a few questions about shadowing, and just noted that there's a fair amount of concern about that. For a question for the architects regarding FAAS, architecture, design and vision, allowing sun into the courtyard. Could you, and there's also another question, we'll stay with the courtyard, about the privacy and the design of it. Can you speak to that area?
I'll just quickly jump in. So I'm not sure the exact wording of the question there, Jennifer. So FAAS, FAAS architects, were the architects of Cocoa. So I'm not sure if the question relates to the Cocoa courtyard or if you're now asking a question about the current project's courtyard.
So the question was, why does the new architect not follow the design and vision of FAAS architecture, allowing sun into the courtyard? Into the, if it, maybe Talisha can pick it up, but if it's into the Cocoa courtyard, then perhaps what's been shown on screen is that the Cocoa courtyard is shadowed by Cocoa itself. And then we have our design for our new building isn't a mirror image of Cocoa for various reasons. And part of that is, as Talisha, I think, has introduced, is taking the massing away from the laneway. That's what the kind of cutout that you can see on screen is. It's a bit of a U-shape, and that courtyard provides a lot of amenity for the building, but also it takes the massing from the laneway to the 33rd Avenue, so you have a reduced impact and then reduced scale, more sensitive to the laneway behind us. So the courtyard's been designed largely for those purposes.
I think we just need to look at this again. I think we need to be more sensitive to the Cocoa side. I think I was spending a lot of time focused on the laneway, and I had seen, like Max had said, that the Cocoa courtyard predominantly already was in shadow. So I think that I can see that there's a lot more concern about this than I had intended. I didn't know phase vision, and it wasn't something I was disregarding. I think this is just an opportunity to receive this feedback and make our development better.
Thank you, Talisha. Let me send that to everybody. We have a question about the height and why it is significantly higher than Cocoa with 6 floors rather than the 4.5. The top floor on the southwest corner creates major shadow setback from the lane is positive though. Would you like to speak to the height, Max or Talisha?
I can jump in there. You know, with the height, you know, we were initially with the 3 parcel project last year, we had similar heights to what we do now. We had taller ceilings on the main floor because it was retail. So those ceiling heights were upwards to 13 feet, 14 feet, where typically residential ceilings are 9 feet. And we also increased the height of the top floor units on the 5th floor to 10 feet instead of 9 feet. So with our initial proposal, even though it was 5 stories, it was very similar to, you know, the height that we're where we're at right now. Just with 6 stories, they're all basically 9-foot ceilings. There's no more 14 feet and there's no more 10-foot ceilings on the top floor. So in that respect to what we initially proposed last year, we're roughly around the same height, and we're within the 20 meter height. So the main difference between when we look at Cocoa with the laneway towns, the 3 stories versus, you know, adding on another floor to achieve 6 stories, that, you know, result or that outcome is really stemmed from shadowing. And so the shadowing that happens from a 3-story townhome that sides onto the lane is pretty significant. And so, you know, we wanted to get away from that. And MU1 zoning has, you know, Talisha, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but there's a pretty aggressive setback towards the lane as well. You know, I look at other buildings up the street. There's a new one called Courtyard 33, and you know, I was talking to a resident a couple of days ago, and so one of the comments, you know, from her was, there's a courtyard in the middle, and then there's a building at the back of the lane which goes up however tall it goes up, 4 stories, you know, 5 stories, whatever that looks like. There's a courtyard in the middle, and then there's the building, you know, facing 33rd Avenue. So as a neighbor on that lane, you're looking at a 4-story, you know, or even 5-story facade. I don't know exactly what those stories are. Do you guys know what that building, how that building is set, if it's 4 stories along the lane? No, that's fine. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to take away that massing that sits right on that lane, and we're pushing that building up closer towards 33rd, and we're being sensitive about the shadowing. So even though it is 6-story, you know, after your presentation and working through how we've carved the building, you know, I think the shadowing is more favorable to what we had before as a 5-story. So just because of how the massing is, I think we got to do some work on siding onto Cocoa for sure. But that's kind of, you know, our thought process to where we landed right now.
Just quickly to step in and illustrate a couple of Naz's points there with this diagram here. If you can see, we'll show Cocoa next to our proposed project. And if you look on the ground floor, what's colored green, you can see that the green is set further back than Cocoa. So the bylaw setbacks, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Jared or Talisha, please, but is 7.5 meters from the back of the other side of the laneway. So you go to the other side of the laneway, and then you come 7.5 meters towards our proposed building. And I believe that would be the same bylaw that Cocoa is constrained by. and we've gone further back. Hopefully you can see that small arrow I think Jennifer just drew for us. And then there is a further setback, as you can see, from the courtyard. Rather than pulling the whole building up to that bylaw setback, we have that courtyard as well. So there are just a couple of points illustrated from NASDAQ.
I will come back again with the question about the courtyard. They still would like to know how the privacy is addressed in that area. Is it fenced in? Is it open to public space, common space? How is that?
A lot of it is
addressed?
landscaping. We have tons of trees. We've greened that area, lots of tall, like columnar aspens. Like it's beautiful and lush. And I mean, because it's a side yard, there aren't a ton of windows. Those aren't people's living room windows. Those are people's bedroom windows. So the privacy is actually likely more of a concern. Like it's a two-way street. But I know there's other strategies we can use, like using windows that are higher up. Like at the land use stage, we haven't quite fleshed all of those details out, but we have some strategies to mitigate privacy on that east property line.
And again, sorry, Jennifer, if you don't mind just flicking to slide 6, it shows the current site plan, which would just illustrate a couple of Talicia's points there as well. So just to reiterate, like Talicia said, this is land use, so there is an element of design already in play. Part of our intent of this session is to inform our future design before we submit our application. So everything's not finalized, everything's a work in progress. So this is fairly preliminary what you're seeing, but the footprint itself is 99% what we intend to submit based before today's session, being cognizant of feedback. But that just shows there the courtyard and then the condition that Talicia was speaking to.
You can kind of see where the courtyard is for Coco, and beside that is actually the parking entry. There are 0 windows on that wall. That is it's a blank wall, but it is we've got a lot of landscaping in that area, so you're not just looking at a blank wall, you'll be looking at like trees and plants.
We have questions and would like people to speak more to parking. They're concerned there's only 5 visitor parking stalls in Coco. Can we speak to how many parking stalls there are here? And adjacent to this, a follow-up question is regarding parking impact during construction.
I can start, sorry, my muted. I can start with the first part of the question, I think. So Coco has 74 residential units and there are 5 visitor stalls. And I myself am a resident at Coco. And from what I see, there's at any time potentially 3 or 4 of those are occupied. It's in my experience, maybe others have seen differently, but my experience is they're not full. In our project, as shown here on this slide, thank you, Jennifer, is that we are currently proposing 125 units, so that's another 50% from Coco. Yet we have more than double the visitor stalls. So ratio-wise, we're proposing a lot more visitor stalls ratio-wise than Coco. And so there was a second part to the question regarding parking during construction.
Yes. Do you have a plan for that?
So maybe Naz can expand, but typically within the footprint, obviously if our project proceeds of that 5 parcels, we have lay down areas and we try to have ample parking off the road. So I'm sure many may have seen our current Harrison project. So it's very unlikely to be the same play, but what we did there to be sensitive to that is we rented an adjacent lot, vacant lot for the duration of the project, and that houses largely most of the construction parking on that vacant lot with our site trailer. So I'm sure we'll have a similar play for this project. I don't think details will be concrete just yet, but we are very sensitive to the the construction parking that is increased during construction.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, you know, while we're constructing Harrison right now, I mean, we have upwards to 30 people, 35 to 40 people working on site on average. And so, so that's an additional, you know, potentially 25 cars, anywhere from, I think it's 75, 80%. So, so yeah, it's an additional 30 cars when we're, you know, kind of in the middle of construction for sure. At Harrison, what we've done there is definitely, you know, there's parking along, you know, at the adjacent lot at the site that we're renting, or there's definitely, you know, we're utilizing that off and on for parking, but most of it is actually getting absorbed on the street, you know, 2 to 3 blocks away, and whatever that looks like. I think for this project, there's definitely an opportunity to use the parking lot at the community association. So the community association has a pretty significant size parking lot. And so, and it's only, you know, 2 blocks away. So it's definitely our wish to utilize that area for parking for our trades. You know, as we construct, I think that will alleviate a lot of, you know, traffic and you know, some of those cars from our trades for sure. But that's our plan. So, and it's tough. Like, you know, they're tight spaces, even when we're constructing, and, you know, taking up a lane, you know, for lay down or materials or whatever that looks like. It's tough, and it definitely takes a toll on neighbors and residents as we work through the construction process.
Thank you, Naz. I have another parking question that came in on the heels of that. What is the parking ratio? The writer seems to be under the impression it's 0.7 parking spots per resident in the new building. So people would end up when overflow parking on the street. They're asking, why did you not allow 1 stall per unit?
So the bylaw that, you know, we're held to is, and again, please, the panel, anyone interrupt to correct me, but it's 0.7 stalls per unit. And that's the bylaw, but through the markets and through, you know, the feedback that we have from neighbors and being cognizant of what parking is available on the street and what we'd like to park underground. As shown here, we have 115 resident stalls, and we're currently proposing 125 units. So we're, sorry for quick math, that's probably slightly north of 0.9 per unit rather than the bylaw 0.7. So we are just a handful short of that 1-to-1 ratio. And we've found in our research across the industry and across similar developers in the area that actually market demands slightly less than 1-to-1. So we feel we are hitting the market, and we're also and we're beyond the bylaw requirements as well.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And,
definitely. Yeah. I was just going to reiterate. Yeah, I mean, the city bylaw just stated, you know, just has a lesser parking requirement. We're leaning more towards what we're seeing in the current market, and so we've adjusted parking for, you know, reasons for the market, as well as you know, strong feedback from residents and neighbors as well.
Just a quick side note, not to put Jared and Mark on the spot, but just for attendees awareness, Jared is, whoever missed the introductions, Jared is the file manager for our current land use application, and Mark is a senior figure coordinator in the planning department. So I'd encourage you to use this opportunity to direct questions via Jennifer. That might be policy and city related as well, while you have the opportunity, please.
Thank you. I'm going to go back now. There's quite a few questions. We will get through these. How how are you addressing HVAC and parkade exhaust noise?
Good question.
Not even sure who to direct that to.
Tony, that's a great question. Yeah.
I think Tony should take this one.
Yeah, Tony. You might be on mute, Tony.
He is self-muted.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. You good now, Tony?
I was pressing that button over and over again and it wasn't working. I'm like, why am I
I
shut
think I
out?
was fighting with you, Tony. My apologies.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, early on at this point in the process of a project, we're actually far along in terms of details, which is why Naz has liked working with us. We do take into account things like that, even at land use stage. We have thought about where the location is going to be. So for the intake, which is the noisiest of all of them, because it typically happens to be the fan that sucks the air in from the laneway. That's located actually within the ramp space. So you'll probably see that as the development permit drawings get further along. You'll see that it's above the ramp, and it pretty much is far away from any of the residents. And then the exhaust fan, typically the fan itself is located within the parkade. In this case, there's probably going to be two of them because there's two levels of parking. But both of those won't impact, because usually those exhaust either ducts or exhaust tunnels are acoustically lined anyway, so they certainly won't be any impact to the neighbors, probably not even for the building residents themselves. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Tony. And obviously people are typing in questions for the chat function. Hopefully you can see some replies from Jennifer, the moderator, as well. She just mentioned that Zev from Councillor Willey's office is available for follow-up questions, and his email address is shared in the chat function for you as well.
Thank you. We have a question about the loading zone area. How large is that?
By 9.2.
Slide 6 there, please, Jennifer, and Talisha or Tony could field that for us, please.
There we go.
Yeah. So there's a painted area that is,
Should be 3.1 meters by 9.2 meters long.
yeah, it's 3.1 by 9.3. And then we have 6 meters to the west of it so that it has vehicle access. Because we've got a power pole in the lane.
So you may not have cursor ability, but can you just describe to people where you're looking?
Just north of the waste and recycling area, there's a gray rectangle just north of the waste and recycling label, right up against the lane.
Yes, the intent is to share the waste and recycling staging area where you would roll out the bins with a loading zone. So the loading zone, it's the size of a loading zone. It's a bit oversized for what we would need. But so that when people are moving in, they can park there, and it connects right to an entry that connects the other exit. But then also on waste and recycling day, they can roll the bins out there to be collected.
Thank you. There's a question, do you have an alternative design if you're not granted the 6 stories? I think that was addressed a bit with the 20 meters and the height differences of the floors. But do you have an alternative design if this rezoning doesn't move forward, or?
Again, I think Naz could follow up from my answer, but hopefully we've shown you we've had extensive engagement on the previous 3 parcels, and that did have extensive design, and using the feedback from that whole process, which have garnered from the neighborhood as well, is why we're proposing this this building for various reasons, to fit in with city policy, the main streets, what we think is great urban design with the monolith fabric. So we have no backup plan, if you like. This is our intention, and we hope to be successful, obviously. And that's what we're presenting to you today.
If I might add, Max, I mean, again, we always have to reiterate, this is the land use stage, and there's plenty of details that are still yet to be worked out, specifically as the building interacts with Coco and the neighbors to the north. And there's so many ways that we can alleviate, mitigate some of those concerns. So I guess they can look towards being part of the development permit process as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Tony.
Our designs are always changing and shifting. Like we're never end up at the end with what we started with. Like that's why we're here to
Yeah, it isn't so much a backup plan as it is an evolution of the design as we hear more from the residents. So.
Yeah.
And we're certainly hearing a lot of concern about the shadowing. There's a question about if you will provide those shadow studies and this presentation online so people can review them and access them.
Yeah, and I think also in addition to that, what I wanted to say earlier was, I mean, there's obviously two ways to mitigate shadowing. Either you shorten your building or you pull your building away from the impacted parties that are part of it. And, you know, we're obviously trying to do a little bit of both. Obviously moving away from the laneway is one. And, you know, in order to achieve GFA, you have to build a building at a certain height, and there's just no way around that. But at the same time, you can sculpt the building in certain ways to reduce that skyline of the building and to reduce the impact. One of those ways is to perhaps pull back the top floor, and we've certainly done that on the 6th floor, and perhaps we can do that in other locations as well to kind of reduce that shadow impact.
Thanks, Tony. And just to, I think, answer the first part of your question, Jennifer, so hopefully everyone's aware there is a website related to the project, engage1600.ca, which has been shared in various literature with everybody. So from the session we did approximately a year ago, we did share the video of that session on the PowerPoint slides, and we will be doing the same following today's session.
Can you speak to the setback on the top floor? The old building was 60% of the main. Is that still the case for the 5th and 6th floors on this massing?
If you could flip to the massing slides, which I think looking between slide 9 and 10, and if Tony and Talisha could address that as well, please.
I mean, offhand, I don't know what the percentage is.
That would represent, yeah,
I could get back to you on that.
Yeah, it's about 75%.
The previous slide shows the previous proposal of the 3 parcels, and hopefully it's fairly illustrated from the different colors. If you don't mind just flicking back in. Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. So that shows the condition of our previous proposal of the 3 parcels. I don't think that's maybe it's 75%, but it's illustrated here for you from this slide to the next slide of how we're currently proposing massing.
There's a question about if more space could be created between Coco and this building.
Again, maybe sorry if Tony or someone can expand on this, but we have, the bylaws are that within the zoning, you can push all the way up to Coco. So we have already been somewhat sensitive, we feel, to some feedback we've received. And we have pulled the building back, I think it's actually 3 meters in our current preliminary design.
I'd like to ask Mark about that, actually. So Mark, sorry to put you on the spot there, but you know, when we're looking at MU1 zoning, and so, you know, it's an urban residential, you know, mid-rise or low-rise, you know, intention. And so the setbacks, I think I understand the 0 setback along the front street. I think there's an aggressive setback along the lane as well. Talisha, do me a favor, or maybe Jared, can you just educate us on what is the MU1 setback zoning? for the front, the back, as well as the sides. So with this type of urban residential intention, why does the bylaw state, like it's a common thing that we hear from neighbors with respect to shadowing and privacy. And whenever we hear that feedback, we're always trying to get that building a little bit more, further away, as we've tried to do here. I think it's 10 feet away from the property line. But why does the bylaw state 0? Like, what's the intention behind that?
Can you hear me on the call in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, Talisha, were you going to itemize front, side, rear in the bylaw? I've got the bylaw up, but if you already have it handy, it'll be faster.
Well, I just know that it's 7.5 meters from the adjacent property line of the lane.
Okay.
So I know what they are, but I think
Yeah.
what Naz is asking is why? Why are they 0? Why
Yeah.
isn't there?
I understand 0 facing the street, and that's what we've tried to do here is push the building, towards the front street. But the bylaw states 0. We're not working with the bylaw in that respect. We're trying to be considerate. But why does the bylaw state that?
Okay, so the reason for the 0 stems from how one configures building in a main street setting. So if you think in terms of classic or even historic Main Street, you were dealing with anywhere from 4 to 6 stories, and the ground floor was often as not retail or some form of commercial that was serving the local area. So basically the ground floor meeting the back of sidewalk. And that's a pretty traditional streetscape that allows for commercial at grade. MU1 makes commercial at grade optional. You've described tonight that you're interested in a live-work option off of the main floor. And again, that would suit a 0 lot line to the Main Street configuration. And then if we turn to side yard, well, typically you're going to go side against side, and you may actually flange one building against the other. In this case, you've got an existing edge condition with Coco, which you know as well as anyone on the panel, and you have that courtyard configuration. So I would say that's not typical of a Main Street configuration.
Right.
And then against the lane, again, a Main Street lane, rear lane, you have access minimized.
Yeah.
Earlier, you were talking about Courtyard 33, and I did a quick kind of visual checkup. They are 6 stories. They are 4 stories. For the first 4 stories, they're 10 feet, 3 meters off the lane. And then they do an approximately like a 10-foot setback at 5th floor and a 15 setback at the 6th floor. There's a lot more sculpting going on here horizontally in terms of that U shape, that long shallow U shape, which is not the approach at Courtyard 33. Courtyard 33, because of that void in the middle, wanted to optimize the position of the building relative to the lane. So they wanted to come closer to the lane. And in this setup, you're optimizing Main Street 0 setback against the sidewalk, and then you're compensating with this wide, shallow U against the lane. But I would observe your interface with Coco is a unique situation because of the existing courtyard with Coco.
Yeah.
That is something that's not necessarily anticipated in the MU1.
Yeah.
And so it's good to hear you listening to the feedback tonight from from the other attendees.
You know,
I hope that helps.
yeah, it helps me a bit. I mean, when you were speaking about the intention with MU1, it reminded me of all the buildings in Toronto or some of the European cities where,
Sure.
you know, they're like, you know, brick and I don't know, there's like no space in between, right? So,
Courtyard 33 is a blank facade on the inboard side, and that same developer group is now working on another development to the east of Courtyard 33, and it will flange up on those two facades. Those will basically be, you know, virtually touched.
But if I could add to that, Mark, I think, you know, certainly from our last cycle of zoning changes till now, I like that we moved away from, you know, the whole front, side, rear to more talking about what interface are we dealing with here? Is it a street? Is it a lane? Is it a neighbor? Is it a low density neighbor? And I think even the MU1 has a section that says if you are adjacent to a low density, which kind of we were, right, up until this proposal.
Yeah.
We would have to respect a 3 meter, at the very least on the site setback, and a rear setback of 6. So it does deal with interfaces that are more sensitive.
Yeah, and that reflects that the Main Street zoning that has been laid out in a number of corridors, so not just Marda Loop,
Right.
it acknowledges that there's going to be an evolution. And initially, a development like this might be next door to much lower density existing development. So it requires setback, and in some cases it requires a chamfer as well.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the, you know, exact case here.
And not every land use can deal with the details of the context of any site. That's where the development permit comes in. So
yes.
Okay.
I am noting quite a few comments and questions regarding the massing model for Cocoa, showing 5 stories instead of 4, and townhouses that are 4 stories instead of 2. Can an updated model be provided on the engagement site? I have over 6 questions on this issue.
Yeah, apologies for that. Looking at detail, it does seem to show that. So we will clean this up just for that side-by-side comparison a bit clearer. I think the heights look accurate to me, but we've just put the lines, we've put too many lines in the block of Cocoa there. So apologies for that. We'll definitely get that cleaned up as we present it. Also, we have gone over the meeting time, so I think we'll have to continue quickly if there's a few things to still to do, Jennifer, and then if we do need to drop off, or if we do end, then as has been shared before, please send emails to myself and we will address any outstanding concerns.
Yes. There is a question about when you believe construction would start if everything traverses along at the expected rate.
If we are successful, obviously, there's still quite a few hurdles to go through. Maybe putting my timeline there. Thank you, Jennifer. So following this, this is the land use application. So the land use has to go to the Calgary Planning Commission. So for those who are unfamiliar, that is a closed session where the project is discussed. If it passes through that session on June the 17th, I think we are currently scheduled, it would go to public hearing of council on July 26th, and that is the open session. So that happens, it's like there's 2 paths. There's the land use application, and then we intend to submit a DP application within June based on feedback we've received today and ongoing feedback to further inform our current design. And then that DP application goes through its own process. After your DP application, we have our building permit application, which is just a lot more detail of the actual construction details. But the development permit essentially is, shows everybody what we intend to build. The building permit is just the interior details and bit of complexity to construction of exterior as well, obviously. So all in through those processes, I think all goes well from our end. Then I think it would be around October, Naz. That's
Yeah, I mean, it's our intention to get into the ground in the fall. But you know, there's a lot of factors to consider, but it is our intention for definitely towards the end of the year.
So that is the permitting process. We have our own marketing influences, market industry influences as well, but that is our current intention. All goes well.
Thank you. This should be a quick one. Is the HVAC rooftop unit on the roof?
There should only be a corridor, very small corridor fresh air units on the roof. That would be the extent of it. All the other HVAC, so that would be the cooling for the units, would be individual to the units themselves, which would mean they would have their own condenser on their balcony.
Thank you.
Anything that's on the roof too, we would propose to screen.
Is this building intended to be for sale or rentals?
The intention is for purpose-built rental.
I think there are, and to be clear for the attendees who are watching, there will be a full transcript of all questions provided to Sarina Homes and the architects. So if we've missed some of your questions, they'll be able to follow up on that. I'm trying to group them together. We had quite a few questions in here, but the team is committed to proper engagement, and there will be another swing by on engagement when the development permit comes in and the building is known. I believe they'll be addressing quite a bit of this with your feedback.
Jennifer, let me just jump in there. I think we should just review the feedback as a team, over the next few days, and then it might be worth going through another session just to review some of those more common, feedback or concerns. So I'm hearing shadowing, and shadowing is sticking out for sure. I think definitely some noise considerations. I think privacy is another thing that I heard. So maybe when there's a little bit more of a developed permit set that's available, but I think we may even just have an engagement sooner. So yeah, just look out for that. We're definitely keen to go back, resolve some of these items and see how we can fix some of these, and then just report back to the to residents and neighbors to have another session on what we've done.
Thank you, Naz.
Okay.
The last question I think should be addressed, there's multiple questions about it, is about how if you have a plan for access during construction to the laneway and safety, parking, road closures during construction. Can you speak to that, Naz or Max?
Yeah, for sure. I think we definitely need to put more thought into parking, lane closures for sure. Yeah, I just 100%. We'll have to be more proactive. Right now, at Coco, when we were building, we never handed out notices for lane closures. And so we definitely went through process with the city to attain our permits, and usually those were done 2 to 3 days in advance, but we never gave neighbors the heads up to say this is what was happening. And so it was just almost expected as we were, kind of constructing at Harrison. What we're doing is 3 days before, when we do apply, we do a drop. And so we capture, the block to our west and a block to, or just one block radius around. And then we do a neighbor drop just to help inform when we will be shutting down the lane for construction. So I think definitely we'll, and that's been awesome, and the neighbors have appreciated that. So I think we'll definitely, have as part of our process. I think the additional parking at the community association and working with them, I think, is going to be better than what we're doing right now at Harrison. Staging and laydown is tough. We're going to have to sort that out. So we definitely need to figure out a plan for what that looks like.
Thank you, Naz. I have flagged and responded privately to quite a few people that we will call attention to additional materials that have been and questions that have been asked for the team to follow up with individuals and or more engagement. We're quite a bit over time tonight. There were lots of questions and we appreciate those questions and feedback from everyone.
How many residents did we have on the line?
We started with 21 and we still have 19 attendees.
Oh yes, we dropped 2.
Mm-hmm.
Two left through the back door. Okay. Okay.
I would close this down now and thank everyone for their attendance and the panelists for their candor and cooperation on all of this. Collaborative design is well informed by good attendance and feedback.
And I just want to add in, like, in terms of engagement, everyone, definitely reach us, through Max's email. Jared is available through the city to answer any questions pertaining to bylaws or any technical, anything really. It just doesn't have to be bylaws or anything technical or anything like that. But also Zev from Councillor Willie's office as well. Those are, definitely the 3 avenues to express your feedback, and we're in touch with Councillor Willie's office, is obviously with Jared as well, and so we definitely seek that feedback to kind of help us achieve the right outcome for what we're trying to build on the main street.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for your participation and thank you panelists for joining us tonight.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.